I'm going to go unshy while I
Welcome.
finish my breakfast.
Okay. Just make sure you don't eat with your video on. That's all.
Right.
Okay. Welcome, and we'll start, of course, with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Here is the passage that we are looking at. Okay. So again, right, the whole context of this is Moses is sharing all of this with the Jewish people. And I feel by extension with us, he's speaking to us. V'zacharta et kol haderech, and you should remember the whole way, Sher holichecha Hashem Elokecha, which the Lord your God has taken you. Okay. 1 second. All right. Sorry. Ze arba'im shana, these 40 years bamidbar in the wilderness, right? Leman anodcha, in order to cause you adversity, right? He's testing you, causing you adversity. And the word ani with an ayin refers to a person who's poor, right? Lenasotcha, to test you. Ladat, so there's this, we're talking about how the Bible can test us. All right. So here we have a little bit of an internal support for this concept, right? Where God is saying he's testing us. And of course, you look at the life of Abraham for sure. And we know it's a series of 10 tests. So it's another way of looking at the purpose of life, right? Is to be tested for life, to provide us with a series of tests as we go through life to see how we're gonna do. It's a different model, but it's a model. Okay. Lada'at, to know, for God to understand and to know, et asher bilvavcha, what is in your heart, hatishmor mitzvotav imlo, will you guard his commandments or not? Powerful, these are powerful lines. Let's take a look here. Yep. Hatishmor mitzvotav. Will you follow? Will not follow? It means to guard, right? His commandments. Shelo tenasehu. And what do we mean by this? What's the, how do we break this down? Rashi, of course, helping us here. Shelo tenasehu, that you shouldn't test him. Velo teharher acharav, and you shouldn't think evilly after him. You shouldn't have bad thoughts because he's testing you. And because you're facing adversity, right? And so to nasehu, to try God, etc. And the examples were given, of course, during the 40 years of wandering. And we do see how, when we blame God and stuff like that, are we capable of working against that? So it's not the fact that we won't have those feelings. The question is, can we work through those feelings? And to what degree will it prevent us from doing the mitzvot? Do we not do them because we want to pay God back? Or do we do the mitzvot and ask God to help us understand what's going on here? So, Vaye'ancha, so there's that anotcha, the same root, right? So he caused you adversity. Vayar ivecha, and he caused you to go hungry. Ra'av is a famine, all right? But to be hungry, ra'ev is the Hebrew way of describing, ani ra'ev means I'm hungry. Vaya'achilcha et haman, and he fed you the manna. Asher lo yadata, which you never experienced, right? You never knew. But the word yada, I think, is experienced. And that's a beautiful understanding of when we talk about sexual intimacy and we use the word yada, okay, that word as the verb, and to mean to experience someone. Excuse me one moment. Forgive me. Okay. So you've never experienced the manna, velo yad'un avotecha, nor did your ancestors experience it. They've never had the manna. That's why it was called manna, right? It means what is it, right? Lema'an hodiacha, and this is perhaps one of the greatest statements in the Torah. In order to inform you, ki lo al halechem levado yichya ha'adam. That's the phrase. Man does not live lo yichya on bread alone. That a human being doesn't live on bread alone. Ki al kol motza pi Hashem, but on whatever comes out the mouth of God, yichya ha'adam, man lives. And of course, my understanding of this, the basic pshat as I understand this, is to recognize that life is far more than the physical acquisition, that we need more than physical food to live. And that's the point of the statement. And it's, I think, one that speaks volumes to the times in which we live, that we need to realize that we also survive and live on spiritual things, but also the degree to which we are so dependent on a divine source, on this divine transcendent source for our own existence. And I think that's also what this is saying. And when, of course, you consider how amazing it is for our bodies to even function, their complexity, and we, even within the body, the grandeur of the various systems of the body to help us function. And also, I would say, our ability to heal is also something that is amazing. And to really try and begin to understand how little we understand about these very things that allow us to exist. Onwards, Rashi does not feel that needs explanation. Simlatcha lo valta, your clothing, your dress did not wear out, me'alecha, from upon you, Veraglacha lo vatsecha, and your legs did not, or your feet did not swell, ze arba'im shana, for these 40 years, right? Has a lot to do with assumptions and entitlements. And I know that these days there are certainly people who talk about, having part of the service, starting the service with feeling with gratitude, that is so important, right? To feel grateful and to look around us at things that we, because we are so reliant on them and they're so reliable and we don't ever have to worry, or it doesn't seem like we ever have to worry about these things functioning or working or receiving them or stuff. So we don't have any sense of gratitude about this, and this spiritual exercise of deeply meditating about all the things we have to feel grateful about. And what a powerful spiritual foundation that is. And I love quoting a proverb that my mother taught me, basically in Yiddish. And the translation of that Yiddish is, when is the beggar happy? When is the beggar happy? When he finds the object he lost. And of course, the implication being that we're all beggars in that regard, because we simply are the beneficiaries of so many different things that we don't even ask for. So, simlatcha lo valta, your dress, your clothing did not wear out. And he says how, Rashi again giving us a little deeper understanding. Anane kavod hayu, that the clouds of the divine presence, right, were shafim biksutam, they would rub against their clothing, umedahatzin otam, and we aren't really actually sure of what the word gihutz means. Nowadays in modern Hebrew, my understanding is it means to iron something, but it could also mean to launder. right, and would launder them. Kemin kelim meguhatzim, like clothing that is laundered. Va'af katnehem, oh yes, and even their children, right, their minors, kamoshahayu, just as they were, gedelim haya gadel levushan. It's saying that their clothing grew with them. So as the little ones grew larger, their clothing also grew larger, imahem, with them. Kilvush hazeh, like the clothing shel chomet shegadel imor, like the clothing of a lizard that grows with it. I had also, I don't know that this is an accurate translation. Lauren?
And mine says snail's shell.
Right, exactly. So I looked up the word chomet and I didn't find the word snail, but actually before I put in lizard, I actually had snail. So I think snail makes more sense because that hard shell you wouldn't think would grow, right? And yet it does. So I'm going to change this to snail.
And lizards molt.
Yes.
Some of them, at
Yes.
least, they shed their skin.
Right, right. So it makes sense. Snail seems to make more sense. Lo batseka, so I said it didn't swell. Their feet didn't swell. Lo nifcha or nafcha kevatsek. So he's explaining this root batseka, okay, to swell, and he says it didn't swell off. Nafcha would be to swell, like dough. Batsek is dough. Kederech holchei yachef, just as is the custom or the way, the manner in which those who go barefoot, shereglahem nefuchot, their legs swell up. So again, Moses telling them the degree to which God has protected them on a very personal kind of level. I love the fact that he picks on their clothing, right, and that their clothing was always nicely laundered and pressed and looking good. And it's I don't know that this is necessarily the intention of the text, but we all know to what degree clothing and nice clothing can influence our moods and how we feel. We know that. I mean, it's a very powerful psychological effect that clothing has on us. So whether or not that's part of the intent here, but I'm sure that they understood. Even though they were in this wilderness for 40 years, they didn't look schleppy at all. God really took care of them. V'yadata im levavecha, and you should know in your hearts, right, with your whole heart, ki ka'asher yiyaser, that just as, I got to get on with the sentence here, ish et beno, just as a man disciplines his son, Hashem Elokecha miyasreka, the Lord your God disciplines you. Now, miyaser can also, have the intent, have that implication or connotation of punishment. But to me, in some ways, the fact that it's using the term discipline or using it in that context, and the sentence itself is clearly indicates that what God is trying to do is to test us and to teach us and stuff like that. And again, this would be supportive of the position that I really like these days, which is when we face adversity, we should be asking ourselves, we shouldn't be saying, why is God punishing me? That is not necessarily the model that is a helpful model, because it can unfortunately lead to a sense of self-pity, but rather asking ourselves, what is God trying to teach me? What am I supposed to, or turning it fully, saying, what do I need to learn from this situation? What do I need to learn from this adversity? And I hope that that's really a helpful model rather than a punitive one. V'shamarta et mitzvot Hashem Elokecha, and you should guard the commandments of the Lord your God, lalechet bidrachav, to walk in his ways, or liyirah oto, and to fear him. And of course, here we come across this expression that and people seem to have so many objections to, but it has to do with having enough respect that in so many ways we either deny God's existence, or we don't, even if we accept the idea of a transcendent existent one, we don't necessarily feel impelled to follow the notion of commandments, that divine transcendent one has a claim on us. Golda, yes.
Yeah, I have revere.
Yes, I know.
That's the word I have in
Yes.
JPS. Yeah. Which also kind of has that respect idea in it.
It does.
At least I would say it.
No. I think you're right. And I think the reason why they took that word is because people really react to the word fear. And
Yeah, it's not
that's why, yeah.
It's
But
got the wrong connotation for what we're trying to say.
Well, I'm not sure that it does. That's the point. And I think it's part of growth for us to understand that fear also has some positive sides to it. That in some cases, fear protects us. And I don't think we're talking about abject fear here. And I also think, honestly, I appreciate your bringing out that word, that it's helpful. Yeah, Lauren.
Well, I mean, so if the fear comes from the concern that God will punish you for not being obedient, then really there are only two solutions. One is not caring about God, and the other is being more obedient. So I think the point is to put you and keep you on a path of you do care about God, but you alleviate your fear by doing good.
Right. I think you're right. I really do. I wouldn't even necessarily have anything to add, believe it or not, to what you just said. But I think that's the point. And I think it really is the reason why, even if it's hyperbole, right? Even if the word fear is hyperbolic, I think it's, the way I put it is taking God seriously. How seriously do you take this notion of a divine, transcendent, existent, where your existence actually depends on the existence of God? So, but yes, I think the way you pointed it out is basically what Moses is trying to tell them. So, right? Here we go. Ki Adonai Elohecha, for the Lord your God, mevi'acha el eretz tova. He is bringing you to a good land. Eretz nachale mayim, a land with rivers of water. Ayanot, wells. Utuhomot means deep wells. Yotzim bibika, that come out in the valleys, uvahar, and on the mountains. So the point is, it's arable, that you can farm this area, and it has, you'll see. And by the way, this is Deuteronomy 8:8. And this verse that's how it's relatively easy to remember this particular verse, right? Eretz chita usorah, a land of wheat and barley, vegefen, and vine, in other words, of course, grapes, uta'ena, and figs, verimon, and pomegranates, eretz zait shemen, a land of olive oil, right, with an oil of olives with oil, udavash, and honey. And we understand, because of the context of this particular dvash, in the context of these various fruits, etc., and vegetables, that we're talking about date honey here. We understand it to be date honey, right? And Rashi, this zait shemen, right? Olive of oil. Zeit shemen, zeitim osim shemen. Olives which produce oil. So this is where we get if you count these up, you will see we get 1, wheat, 2, barley, 3, grapes, 4, figs, pomegranates, rimon, right? 5, zeit shemen, olives, 6, udvash, date honey, 7. So you've heard of the 7 species. Here they are. This is it. This is the verse. And the reason that these are picked out is they are considered to be particularly fine in this region. That the produce, these particular items of produce are so fine that Israel is noted for these particular products. Eretz asher lo, a land asher lo b'miskenut tochal ba'lechem. So a miskein again means poverty. It's another word for poverty. A land in which you will tochal ba'lechem, lo tochal ba'lechem, you will not consume or eat bread b'miskenut, in poverty, right? In other words, basically that you're going to go hungry. Lo, and just to emphasize this, lo tichsar kol ba, you shall not lack anything within it. Eretz, a land, asher avaneha barzel, whose stones are of iron, right? In fact, there is this particular stone, I don't know if it's volcanic, that you find in Israel that's called barzelit. That's what they call it, whether that's the Hebrew. I'm trying to think. I think it's basalt or basalt in English. Umeharereha, and from its mountains, tachtzov nechoshet, you shall mine out brass, copper. Va'achalta, here we go, another very famous verse. Va'achalta v'savata, you shall eat and be satisfied. That is the key, because you can eat and not be satisfied. And so this is of course the basis of Birkat Hamazon, of thanking God for the food you eat, right? All part of showing appreciation. You shall eat and be satisfied.
Doesn't it also
Yeah.
say Berachacha?
It's going on with it. I'm just having to find it, right? There's so much commentary in between. Here it is, Judith. Uveirachta et Adonai Elohecha, and you shall bless the Lord your God, al haaretz, on the land, the hatova, this good land, asher natan lach, which he has given to you. So some really beautiful and worth meditating stuff, worth meditating on. And we're going to stop here today. Seems to me like a good place to stop. I'm look forward to any comments you may want to make at this time.
That's an important paragraph right there.
Yes, it is. It is. It's a profoundly important paragraph. Yes, agreed. Okay, I guess we can stop the recording at this point.